The air in Ethelgard was heavy, thick with the scent of ozone, and the creeping despair of the shadow-touched lands. For 3 centuries, the world had been slowly darkening. Ever since the Shadow Lord Morthos began his tireless quest to extinguish the last vestiges of the first sun's light. Now, only one hope remained. The scattered pieces of the primordial star, known simply as the Sun Shards. Our protagonist, Anya, was merely an apprentice luminaseer, barely 18 summers old, yet she carried the final, desperate charge of the dwindling citadel of dawn. She wasn't strong like the warrior mages of old. Her magic was timid, often flickering out at the very moment she needed it most. But she possessed the ancient map, woven from pure ether silk, which pulsed with faint gold light beneath her tunic. This map led to the last hidden sanctuary, the Vault of the Sun, where the final shard was guarded by arcane wards and forgotten spirits. Her protector was Kaelin, a grizzled veteran of the Dawn Guard, whose body was a mosaic of scar tissue, and whose eyes held the weary resolve of 1,000 lost battles. "We must reach the Obsidian Peaks before nightfall." Anya Kellen's voice was a low, urgent rasp, echoing through the desolate ruins of a fallen village. Anya nodded, clutching the map. The thought of the shard, the literal piece of the sun, was the only thing keeping the encroaching darkness at bay. She imagined it as a blazing jewel, something magnificent and external, capable of burning Morthos's shadow away forever. They rode to horses quick, sturdy mountain breeds, pushing them past the point of exhaustion, knowing Morthos's hounds were close behind. The hounds were not mere animals. They were monstrous amalgamations of shadow and sinew, led by the hulking Captain Rexus, Morthos's second-in-command. As they reached the treacherous ascent of the peaks, the ground trembled. Rexus had found them. "Scatter," Glon roared, his voice cutting through the whipping wind. He drew his sunblade, a weapon crafted from concentrated light, which hummed in the gloom. Anya scrambled off her horse, the sunblade's light briefly illuminating Rexus's grotesque horned helmet as he rounded the corner of the mountain path. Rexus laughed, a dry, cracking sound, like shattering rock. "The prophecy is broken, old man. The girl is weak. Give me the map." Kaelin planted his feet, a lone beacon against the advancing darkness. "The lineage of the sun will not fall to a brute like you, dog." Anya knew Kaelin was buying her Tima, few precious minutes that meant the difference between salvation and eternal night. She ran, clutching the ether silk map, its light suddenly seeming impossibly fragile against the deepening purple shadows of the peaks. Behind her, the clash of Kellen's sunblade against Rexus's shadow axe was a terrible symphony of light and despair. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The prophecy demanded her forward, unwavering movement. Following the map's twisting, intricate lines, she found a narrow crevice hidden behind a waterfall of frozen spray. She squeezed through, the jagged rock tearing at her clothes and scraping her skin, tasting the sharp metallic air of extreme altitude. The crevice opened into a vast, silent cave. The air within strangely warm and scented with jasmine, a flower that hadn't bloomed in Ethelgard for centuries. This was the vault. The cave walls were covered in murals depicting the creation of the world by the first sun and the subsequent sundering of its power. At the cave's center was a stone altar, simple and unadorned, save for a single, deep indentation, perfectly sized for a fist. There was no giant crystal, no blazing jewel, just the indentation. Anya felt a chill of profound disappointment. The prophecy had spoken of the final shard, the light that would banish the shadow. Where was it? She placed her trembling hand into the indentation. The stone was warm, almost feverish. As she did, the ether silk map detached itself from her tunic and fused instantly with the rock face. The fusion triggered a low, harmonic chime, and a beam of pure, ancient sunlight pierced the ceiling of the cave, focusing directly onto the altar. The light intensified, not illuminating the room, but concentrating itself into a single, blinding pinpoint above the indentation. From that pinpoint, a whisper resonated in her mind, a voice that sounded like the singing of stars. "The shard is not found, it is received." Anya realized the terrifying truth. The shard wasn't an object to be wielded, it was energy to be contained. She was the vessel. The prophecy had never been about finding a relic, but about becoming the relic. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped her. This power could shatter her fragile human body, just as it shattered the stone cannon behind her. But the scream of Kalen outside a final, agonizing cry napped her hesitation. He was gone. The time for fear was over. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath of the jasmine-scented air, and lowered her head, offering herself fully to the concentrated light. The pinpoint of light dissolved, rushing into the indentation and up through her arm, flooding her body with a power that felt impossibly vast and ancient. It was not a pleasant sensation. It was agony, the sensation of having your physical atoms rewritten by divine fire. Anya's body arched, every nerve ending screaming as the final shard of the first sun found its home in her very soul. Her previously timid magic exploded outward, shattering the stone altar and throwing Anya back against the cave wall. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer a nervous brown, but a blazing molten gold. The change was instant and absolute. She wasn't Anya the apprentice anymore. She was Anya the sun-bearer. She didn't have time to process the transformation. The cave entrance was suddenly filled by the hulking, enraged form of Captain Rexus. He saw the shimmering gold light emanating from her, recognized the power, and roared in fury. "You have taken what belongs to the Master." Rexus charged, shadow axe raised for a final, decapitating strike. Anya didn't need to think, or even recite a spell. The magic was now instinct. She simply lifted her hand. A wall of pure, crystalline light erupted from the cave floor, slamming into Rexus. The light didn't burn him, it purified him. The shadow that was Rex's armor and skin hissed, peeling away like old paint. Rexus, reduced to the whimpering, unaugmented man beneath the shadow, collapsed. His mission and his master's power momentarily broken. Anya walked past him, now clad in the shimmering internal armor of the shard's light, and stepped back out onto the mountain path. Kalen was lying still near the edge of the ravine, his sunblade dropped uselessly beside him. He was alive barely, but shattered. Anya knelt beside him, and without touching him, the golden light radiating from her began to mend his grievous wounds. The magic felt like breaths, effortless, vast. The shard had given her control over the fundamental energies of life and light. "Anna," Kalen whispered, his eyes widening in awe and terror at the golden luminescence of her essence. "The prophecy is true. It has just begun, old friend," she replied, her voice now carrying the deep, resonating authority of the shard. The Shadow Lord Morthos himself sensed the profound shift. He appeared instantly, manifesting as a vortex of absolute blackness at the foot of the obsidian peaks. Morthos was a creature of singular hunger, a living abyss whose presence choked the very air from the world. He saw Anya glowing like a newborn sun, and his anger was so vast it felt like the mountains were cracking under the pressure. "You dare defy the night, little flame." Morthos's voice was the sound of 1,000 dead souls echoing in chorus. Anya stepped forward, shielding Kalen with her body, facing the being who had hunted her people for centuries. "I do not defy the night, Morthos," Anya said, the light around her intensifying, pushing back the edges of his shadow. "I defy the ending." Morthos launched his attack, a torrent of shadow bolts. Pure entropy aimed at extinguishing her fragile life force. Anya met the attack not with resistance, but with existence. She simply held her ground, allowing the shard's light to flow. The shadow bolts struck her field, dissipating instantly like ink dropped into pure fire. Morthos was momentarily stunned. He had anticipated a fight of strength against strength, not light against darkness. Anya knew the shard's power was finite, a single, potent blast. She couldn't sustain this defense forever. She needed to strike at his core, at the ancient wound that fueled Morthos's unending shadow. Morthos, recovering quickly, began to pull the very shadow from the mountainside, twisting the rock and soil into monstrous grasping claws. The claws wrapped around Anya, freezing her in place, the cold of the abyss threatening to pierce the shard's warmth. Anya looked into the endless void that was Morthos's core. She saw not malice, but agonizing emptiness, the longing for what was lost. She didn't fight the shadow. She embraced the pain, allowing the shard to flow not as a weapon, but as a balm. "You are cold, Morthos," she whispered, her voice cracking with the effort. "The first sun demands balance, not victory." She pushed the final shard's full, accumulated power, the light of creation, of life, and of memory directly into the center of the shadow claws gripping her. The release was catastrophic. It was not an explosion, but an instantaneous dawn. A column of light erupted from the obsidian peaks, visible for 1,000 leagues across Ethelgard. The light was pure, warm, and absolute. It didn't destroy the shadow. It simply filled the void that was Morthos. "The Shadow Lord," Morthos screamed, a sound of profound loss and sudden agonizing fulfillment. He didn't die. He simply ceased to be the shadow, dissolving into a cloud of peaceful, dissipating smoke. The world stood still. The terrible silence of the abyss was replaced by the sudden, gentle sound of the wind and the distant rush of the frozen waterfall. The darkness lifted instantly from Ethelgard, the land bathed in the soft, real light of a restored, if distant sun. Anya collapsed, the gold light retreating from her eyes, leaving them exhausted but clear. The shard hadn't left her. It had simply settled, becoming a small, warm core within her, the anchor of her newfound destiny. Kalen, now miraculously healed by the initial surge of light, struggled to his feet and helped her up. "You are the Sunbearer now," Kalen said, looking not at the battlefield but at the relieved sky. "What happens next?" Anya looked at her hands, still trembling, but now emanating a soft, steady glow that was not terrifying, but comforting. "The prophecy is fulfilled," she said, looking toward the bright horizon where the shadow had just vanished. She was no longer fighting for the survival of a relic, but for the peaceful future of a world free from the eternal night. The final shard of the first sun was not the end of the quest, but the beginning of her rule. The price of the relic was simple. She could no longer be Anya the apprentice. She had to be the Sunbearer. A new era was dawning, an age of light and healing, led by a young woman who had traded fear for destiny in the space of a single heartbeat. The true power of the relic was not in its fire, but in the choice it forced, the choice to be brave, and the choice to contain the sun. Anya knew the path would be long, filled with political intrigue and the slow work of rebuilding a world scarred by darkness. But she carried the sun within her, a reminder that the greatest magic is the courage to accept one's true, brilliant fate. She picked up Kellen's dropped sunblade, its light restored to a steady, hopeful glow, and began the long walk down the mountain. Thank you for watching this epic story from Storycraft Studio. If Anya's realization of destiny and the power of the final shard resonated with you, please like this video, share it with your fellow fantasy adventurers, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio channel for more tales.